The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
You are listening to Valley Free Radio, WXOJ LP 103.3 FM, Northampton.
I do not believe that a few people should control the wealth of any land, that it should be a collective ownership.
What has been created by this half-century of massive corporate propaganda is what's called anti-politics.
How do you think he'll react to you when you learn what a real revolution is?
Finally, after nearly a month on high alert, our national terror alert status today was downgraded to yellow or elevated. There's Americans say it's not worth fighting. So you don't care what the American people think?
No. A better estimate of when American forces can come home from Iraq. No, but that's not too important.
And no matter how long it takes, we will defeat freedom.
We must be prepared to match actions with words by seeking out every creative method of protest possible.
Good evening and welcome to Seeing Red Radio, the radio show with an international revolutionary socialist perspective. I'm your host, Anthony Udell. On tonight's edition of Seeing Red, we'll feature an introductory discussion on Marxist economics, courtesy of MarxistEconomics.com. We'll continue with a speech by Howard Zinn on class, resistance, and the media, followed by a speech by Michael Parenti on class and how it's concealed in the dominant discourse, and then we'll conclude with a story about the world's top hedge fund manager, James Simon, who earned last year alone $1.7 billion. That's all up next on Seeing Red Radio. Please stay tuned.
Today, this is as good as it's going to get in Iraq.
The war is going well enough that there's no need to end it. And just as importantly, it's not going well enough that there's any possibility of ever ending it.
The only war our country has really waged well is a propaganda war on its own people.
Your enemy is ruling your country, and war is what they got to.
There's been a class war waged in America for 30 years now, from the top down, and the rich have won.
To protect the haves from the have-nots, to maintain the security of those who accumulate wealth from the labor of others, to protect wealth from the poverty that wealth creates.
A world run by a handful of greedy bankers and CEOs whom nobody elected can't possibly love.
We do enjoy great privilege and freedom. That legacy was not granted as a gift from above. It was won. It was won by hard and dedicated struggle.
Capitalism of modern industry has come under its feet the very foundation on which the bourgeoisie produces and appropriates products. What the bourgeoisie therefore produces above all are its own favoritism. Its fall and victories of the proletariat are equally inevitable.
Even if you have not formally studied any economics before, it's a sure bet that you've been bombarded with the ideas of capitalist economics, also known as orthodox or neoclassical economics. We are indoctrinated with ideas that accept this particular economic understanding. These ideas are everywhere around us in newspapers, television, movies, and the very language that we use. When someone owns $1 billion, they are said to be worth $1 billion. Don't human beings amount to more than the money they own? Traditionally, factory workers were called hands, as if the rest of them were just irritating bits the employer had to pay for, even though they didn't actually need them. Karl Marx expressed this idea of the economic relations in society taking hold of our reality, almost like the film The Matrix. Quote, "Vulgar economy actually does no more than interpret, systematize, and defend in a doctrinaire fashion the conceptions of the agents of bourgeois production who are entrapped in bourgeois relations. But all science would be superfluous if the outward appearance and the essence of things directly coincided." End quote, from the Trinity Formula, the third volume of Capital. Sometimes we talk about bourgeois economics for the reason Karl Marx explained, but not everybody who has taken a course in economics is an agent of the capitalist class, consciously or unconsciously. They believe the teacher for the same reason they believe the chemistry teacher. Understand why their analysis is powerful. Because the individual transactions that together make up economic activity do consist of two separate parties, a potential buyer and a potential seller, they do have opposing interests. There's no sense denying that supply and demand exist. They do. However, a Marxist analysis provides a broader sweep and grasp of society that is massively more complete than conventional economics. It can explain why the many are poor. Their analysis would tend to deny that it even happens. At the base of orthodox economics is the idea of usefulness, or more technically, use value. We'll talk about more of this in detail later, but we can say from the start that at an everyday level, the idea of measuring things in terms of how useful they are makes sense. The problem with orthodox, neoclassical, or capitalist economics is that this is only part of the picture. Orthodox economists have conveniently dropped and discarded that part of economic understanding that would undermine their existence as capitalists, where value comes from in the workplace. Marxists argue that all value comes from the labor of workers.
Truth is, there's been a class war waged in America for 30 years now, from the top down, and the rich have won.
This morning I was with the vice president. I was asking him what costume he was planning. He said, well, I'm already wearing it. And then he mumbled something about the dark side of the force.
And if you don't have the money by tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I take the farm. You'll never make it. Well, you will.
My fellow citizens, your enemy is ruling your country, and war is what they got. Things look pretty dark, son. Pretty dark.
Marxists argue that all value comes from the labor of the working class. In contrast, orthodox economists say that the core mechanism for an economy are commodities which have values according to their usefulness. That is, value is determined by how useful something is. The problem with this is that this idea does not go deep enough. We would say that it is like looking at the surface appearance of things and not at the heart of what actually makes an economy work. Yes, commodities have to be wanted in the first place, but this is just a precondition for value. It does not create the value itself. Otherwise, your commodity would remain a wish list and a dream. The real point is that the economy is not a wish list, but a social machine, consisting of real people producing the things we want. How can we settle the importance of labor in this social machine, one way or the other, if the heart of the economy is not the use value of a commodity that the capitalist economist tells us it is? To do this, we need to first establish that a commodity is not a universal measure or a marker of an economy. We can then move on to illustrate the core role of labor. Iron and steel seem vital to any modern economy. During the 20th century, and until quite recently, the size of an economy was actually measured by national steel production. But from a simple history lesson, we can think of older economies that have existed and survived without iron or steel. And we can equally think of materials such as plastics, which could do most of the tasks performed by iron and steel. It is evident from this that a commodity is not the baseline or heart of the economy. Consider another example. Think of an economy without coal. Coal was used to fire steam trains. But as you remember from watching cowboy films, where bandits holding up trains, wood burning was an adequate substitute for doing the same thing. Hence, we can see that an individual commodity is a transitory product. It doesn't constitute the core element of an economy. They appear, commodities, to meet needs and disappear when those needs no longer exist or are diminished. Conventional economists start with supply and demand because, well, that's what Marxists do as well. So everyone buys and sells. Is that all? Well, we also go to work. If we didn't, we wouldn't have the money to buy much. So now trying to think what the economy would look like without labor. It couldn't exist.